A single moment can change everything. For Tom Wilson, that moment came on a peaceful spring morning in the mountains of Colorado. The morning started like any other, but it would become a day he would never forget. Tom was not just any wildlife photographer. For 15 years, he had captured the beauty of wild animals through his lens. His photos appeared in major nature magazines, showing people the hidden wonders of the forest. But nothing in those 15 years prepared him for what was about to happen. The sun was just rising over the mountain peaks when Tom left his small cabin that morning. The fresh mountain air filled his lungs as he walked along the familiar forest path. Spring had arrived early this year, bringing with it the sweet smell of wildflowers and the gentle sound of melting snow. At 52 years old, Tom knew these mountains better than anyone. Every tree, every stream, and every animal path was familiar to him. He had chosen this quiet life after years of working in the busy city of Denver. Here, in the small town of Pine Creek, he found his true calling among the wild creatures of the forest. His camera bag hung heavy on his shoulder as he made his way to his favorite spot. Inside was his trusted equipment, worth thousands of dollars, but to Tom, these tools were priceless. They helped him share the magic of nature with the world. His fingers touched the smooth surface of his main camera, checking that it was secure. As he climbed higher up the mountain path, the morning light painted the forest in shades of gold and green. Tom stopped to appreciate the beauty around him. Tiny droplets of dew sparkled on spiderwebs between the branches. Birds called to each other in the trees above. This was the perfect morning for photography. He had heard rumors of a mother bear and her cub in this area for weeks. He had been trying to capture them on camera. Other photographers might have given up, but not Tom. Patience was his greatest strength. He knew that the best photos came to those who waited. Setting up his equipment in his usual spot, Tom checked his surroundings carefully. This clearing gave him a perfect view of the valley below. He had built a small shelter here, hidden among the trees. It was his secret place, where he could watch wildlife without disturbing them. The morning grew warmer as Tom waited silently in his shelter. His thermos of coffee kept him company as he watched the forest come to life. Squirrels chased each other through the branches. Deer stepped carefully through the undergrowth. But there was no sign of the bears he hoped to photograph. Tom's thoughts drifted to his life before coming to Pine Creek. The noise of the city seemed like a distant memory now. Here, the only sounds were the wind in the trees and the calls of wild animals. His ex-wife had called him crazy for leaving his job as a successful commercial photographer, but Tom knew he had made the right choice. In these mountains, he had found something more valuable than money: peace. Little did Tom know that this peaceful morning was about to turn into the most extraordinary day of his life. As he adjusted his camera lens, a sound caught his attention. It was different from the usual forest noises. Something was wrong. The sound came again, louder this time. It was a cry that made Tom's heart beat faster. In 15 years of wildlife photography, he had never heard anything quite like it. The cry was filled with fear and desperation. It was coming from somewhere deep in the forest, beyond his usual paths. Tom's hand tightened on his camera. Years of experience told him to stay put, to not interfere with nature, but something about that cry was different. It pulled at him, urging him to investigate. For a moment, he sat frozen in his shelter, torn between his photographer's instincts and the growing need to help. The cry came once more, weaker this time. Tom made his decision. Gathering his equipment quickly but quietly, he stepped out of his shelter. The sound seemed to be coming from the direction of the old creek bed. It was an area he rarely visited, known for its dangerous mud pits and unstable ground. As Tom moved carefully through the forest, following the desperate cries, he had no idea that he was walking toward a moment that would test his courage, challenge his understanding of nature, and lead to an encounter that would leave him forever changed. Tom moved deeper into the unfamiliar part of the forest. The ground beneath his feet grew softer with each step. The morning mist still clung to the trees, making it harder to see clearly. The cries grew louder, pulling him forward like an invisible rope. His boots sank slightly into the wet earth as he carefully made his way around fallen trees and over slippery rocks. The old creek bed lay ahead, a place local hunters had warned him about. Years of spring floods had created deep mud pits, hidden under innocent-looking surfaces. Even experienced hikers avoided this area. The sound was clear now. Tom's heart jumped as he recognized it, a bear cub. The cry held a special kind of fear that made his skin tingle. In all his years photographing wildlife, he had learned one crucial rule: never get between a mother bear and her cub. Yet here he was, moving toward a sound that could lead him into terrible danger. 20 feet ahead, the ground dipped sharply. Tom got down on his hands and knees, crawling forward to look over the edge. What he saw made his breath catch in his throat. In a deep pit of dark mud, a small bear cub was fighting for its life. The little creature's front paws clawed desperately at the slick sides of the pit, trying to find something to grip, but each attempt only sent it sliding deeper into the mud. Tom quickly scanned the surrounding area, his heart pounding. Where was the mother? Bears never left their cubs alone for long. The forest remained quiet, except for the cub's weakening cries. He pulled out his binoculars, checking every shadow and bush. No sign of the mother bear. The cub's struggles grew weaker. Its small black body was now covered in thick, sticky mud. Each movement seemed to take more energy than the last. Tom could see the fear in its eyes, a desperate plea for help that touched something deep inside him. The mud had already reached the cub's chest, slowly pulling it deeper. Time was running out. Tom knew he had to make a decision. Every second he waited, the cub sank further into the mud. But helping meant putting himself in incredible danger. Mother bears were known to appear suddenly, and their strength was legendary. One swipe of a mother bear's paw could end his life. He thought about his camera equipment. The straps might be long enough to reach the cub, but that would mean getting close to the edge of the pit. The ground looked unstable, softened by recent rains. One wrong move, and he could join the cub in the mud. The cub let out another cry, weaker than before. Its eyes were starting to look dull, the fight draining away. Tom made his decision. He couldn't just watch and take pictures while a young animal died. Sometimes being human meant taking risks to help others, even when those others had sharp claws and dangerous mothers. Moving slowly, Tom set down his camera bag. He took out his longest camera strap and tested its strength. The thick nylon material was designed to hold heavy equipment. It would have to be strong enough. He tied one end to his belt and the other to a sturdy tree trunk. At least if the ground gave way, he wouldn't sink completely into the pit. The mud made horrible sucking sounds as the cub continued to struggle. Its movements were becoming sluggish, its cries softer. Tom estimated the pit was about 8 feet deep. The sides were almost vertical, explaining why the cub couldn't climb out. Even if he could reach it, pulling it free would take all his strength. As he prepared to help, memories of news stories flashed through his mind, stories of hikers killed by protective mother bears. Stories that always ended with warnings about staying away from bear cubs. He pushed the thoughts aside. The time for caution had passed. This was about saving a life. The ground felt dangerously soft under his feet as he approached the edge of the pit. Small pieces of earth crumbled away, falling into the dark mud below. The cub looked up at him, too tired now to show fear. Its small eyes seemed to hold a mixture of exhaustion and hope. Tom lay flat on his stomach, trying to spread his weight evenly across the ground. The mud pit was wider than he had first thought. Even stretched out completely, he would barely be able to reach the struggling cub. The smell of wet earth and decay rose from the pit, making his stomach turn. Tom took a deep breath and began to inch forward on his stomach. The wet ground soaked through his jacket, but he kept moving. Every small movement had to be careful and planned. One wrong shift of his weight could send both him and the remaining solid ground into the pit. His heart pounded as he reached out toward the cub. The camera strap felt secure around his waist, but the distance still seemed enormous. The cub watched him with tired eyes, no longer having the energy to be afraid of humans. Its small body trembled with exhaustion, now covered almost to its shoulders in thick mud. Just a little more, Tom whispered, more to himself than to the cub. His fingers stretched out, trying to reach the small bear. The mud had an awful smell, like rotting leaves in stagnant water. Sweat ran down his face despite the cool morning air. His muscles strained as he pushed himself forward another inch. The ground under his chest made a worrying sound, small cracks appeared in the soil beside him. Tom froze, barely daring to breathe. Seconds passed like hours as he waited to see if the edge would hold. The cub let out a weak whimper, sinking a little deeper into the mud. Tom knew he had to try something different. The current approach wasn't working, and time was running out. He pulled back slightly and untied his second camera strap. With shaking hands, he connected it to the first one, creating a longer reach. The expensive leather strap would be ruined, but that didn't matter now. He moved forward again, this time holding the extended strap. The cub was barely keeping its head above the mud now, its eyes starting to close, strength fading fast. Tom swung the strap toward it, trying to create a loop the cub might grab onto. The first attempt missed. The second swing came closer, but still not close enough. On the third try, the strap brushed against the cub's mud-covered body. Tom held his breath as he carefully positioned the loop near the cub's front legs. A wrong move now could push the cub deeper into the mud. "Please," Tom whispered. "Please work." The cub seemed to understand this was its last chance. With what looked like its final burst of energy, it moved its front paw through the loop of the strap. Tom's heart leaped. This was the moment. Everything depended on what happened next. Moving with extreme care, Tom began to tighten the strap. The cub felt its body being lifted slightly and didn't struggle. Instead, it remained still as if knowing this was its only hope for survival. The mud made horrible sucking sounds as Tom started to pull. The task was harder than he expected. The mud held onto the cub like a living thing, refusing to let go of its prey. Tom's arms burned with the effort, but he kept pulling inch by inch. The cub began to rise from the pit. Dark mud poured off its small body as it slowly emerged. Suddenly, a new sound cut through the air. Tom's blood turned to ice. It was a sound every mountain person feared. A deep, rumbling growl came from somewhere behind him. The mother bear had returned. Tom's mind raced. He couldn't run. The cub was still attached to his strap, half out of the pit. Letting go now would drop it back into the mud, this time maybe for good. But not letting go meant staying exactly where he was, flat on the ground, completely vulnerable. The growl came again, closer this time. Tom could hear heavy footsteps approaching through the forest. In seconds, the mother bear would be upon him. His hands stayed firm on the strap, still pulling. If these were going to be his final moments, he would at least finish saving the cub. The mother bear's footsteps grew louder. Tom could feel the ground vibrate with each step she took. Still, his hands remained steady on the strap. The cub was almost free now, its back legs just starting to emerge from the mud. Every second felt like an eternity. Sweat dripped into Tom's eyes, but he didn't dare move to wipe it away. His arms trembled with effort and fear. The cub was heavier than he expected, weighed down by the thick mud that coated its fur. Behind him, he could hear the mother bear moving closer, her breathing deep and threatening. With one final surge of strength, Tom pulled hard on the strap. The cub came free from the mud with a loud sucking sound. It lay on the solid ground just a few feet from Tom, too exhausted to move. Its small chest heaved with rapid breaths, its black fur now a dark brown from the mud. Tom knew the next few moments would decide everything. He remained completely still, facing the ground, not daring to look behind him. The mother bear's presence felt enormous now. He could smell her wild, musky scent. His fingers slowly released the strap, moving with deliberate care. The mother bear let out another growl, this one so close it made Tom's whole body tremble. He could feel her breath on the back of his neck. This was it. All his years in the wilderness, all his experience with wild animals, might end here, on the edge of a mud pit. Thoughts raced through his mind. Should he try to roll away, play dead, make himself look big? Every strategy he had ever learned about bear encounters seemed useless in this moment. He was completely at the mother's mercy. The mud-covered cub made a small sound, almost like a whimper. It was trying to stand but kept slipping on its mud-coated legs. Tom's heart ached to help it, to reach out and steady the small creature, but he knew that any movement now could trigger the mother bear's protective instincts. Something warm and wet touched the back of Tom's head. The mother bear was sniffing him, her powerful breath ruffling his hair. He could hear her taking in his scent, probably deciding whether he was a threat to her cub. One swipe of her massive paw could end everything. The cub called out again, this time with more strength in its voice. The sound seemed to vibrate through the air between mother and cub. Tom felt the mother bear's attention shift away from him. There was movement beside him as she stepped carefully around his prone body. Tom remained frozen, hardly daring to breathe. From the corner of his eye, he could see the mother bear's massive form moving toward her cub. Her fur was a beautiful dark brown, catching the morning light that filtered through the trees. Despite his fear, the photographer in him couldn't help but notice her magnificent presence. The mother bear reached her cub, touching her nose to its mud-covered body. The gentleness of her inspection was surprising. She checked every inch of her baby, making soft sounds that seemed to comfort the exhausted cub. Her powerful body blocked most of Tom's view, but he could hear the cub's responding whimpers. Time seemed to stand still in the forest. Tom's arms were starting to ache from holding his position, but he didn't dare move. The mother bear continued to care for her cub, seemingly forgetting about the human lying just feet away, or perhaps, Tom thought, she was choosing to ignore him. A gentle breeze moved through the trees, carrying away some of the thick mud smell. Tom's mind was spinning with questions. Why hadn't the mother bear attacked? Every book he had read, every expert he had talked to, said mother bears were incredibly aggressive when their cubs were in danger. Yet here she was, focusing entirely on her cub's well-being. The cub was gaining strength now, responding more actively to its mother's attention. It tried to stand again, this time more successfully. The morning sun had started to dry some of the mud on its fur, making patches of black visible through the brown coating. Its eyes looked brighter now, exhaustion being replaced by renewed energy. Tom's camera lay forgotten in its bag, just out of reach. These moments would have made incredible photographs, but he knew any movement to get his equipment would break this delicate piece. Instead, he committed every detail to memory, the way the mother bear's fur moved in the breeze, the gentle touches between mother and cub, the quiet sounds they made to each other. The forest around them had gone silent, as if every creature was holding its breath to watch this unusual scene unfold. Even the birds seemed to have stopped their morning songs. The only sounds were the soft movements of the bears and the occasional drip of mud falling from the cub's fur. Tom's legs had gone numb from lying so still, and small rocks pressed uncomfortably into his stomach. But these discomforts seemed distant and unimportant compared to the extraordinary situation he found himself in. He was witnessing something few humans ever got to see, a tender moment between mother and cub, undisturbed by fear or aggression. The mother bear suddenly stopped her inspection of the cub. Tom's heart rate spiked again as she slowly turned her massive head toward him. Their eyes met for the first time. In that moment, Tom saw something that challenged everything he thought he knew about these powerful creatures. There was intelligence in those eyes, and something more, something that looked almost like understanding. What happened next would stay with Tom for the rest of his life. The mother bear took one slow step toward him, then another. Her movements were calm, deliberate. Tom's breath caught in his throat as she approached, her eyes never left his, holding him in a gaze that seemed to contain centuries of wild wisdom. The massive bear stopped just a few feet from Tom's head. He could see every detail of her powerful form. The sunlight caught the silver tips of her fur, creating a kind of halo effect around her body. Her claws, each as long as Tom's fingers, rested gently on the forest floor. She lowered her head until it was level with Tom's. The forest seemed to hold its breath. Even the wind died down, leaving an almost supernatural silence. The cub watched from where it stood now, steady on its feet despite the drying mud that still covered most of its body. Its small eyes moved between its mother and the human who had saved it. Slowly, with a gentleness that seemed impossible for such a powerful creature, the mother bear extended her nose toward Tom. Her breath was warm against his face. Every instinct screamed at him to run, to get away from this dangerous wild animal, but something stronger held him in place. A deep understanding that this moment was unique, precious. The bear made a soft sound, almost like a purr, but deeper. It rumbled through the air between them. Then she did something that made Tom question everything he had ever learned about wild animals. She lowered her head and gently pressed her forehead against his shoulder, holding it there for several heartbeats. Tom remained perfectly still, hardly daring to breathe. The gesture felt deliberate, almost like a bow. The great bear's fur brushed against his jacket, surprisingly soft. He could feel the warmth radiating from her massive body. Tears formed in his eyes, though he couldn't explain why. After what seemed like an eternity, the mother bear lifted her head. She looked at Tom once more, her eyes holding his gaze. There was no aggression there, no wild fury. Instead, he saw something that looked remarkably like gratitude. It was as if she understood exactly what he had done for her cub. The cub had moved closer during this extraordinary exchange. It stood beside its mother now, looking much stronger than it had in the mud pit. The mud was starting to crack and fall away from its fur in small chunks. Its eyes were bright and alert, showing no fear of the human who had saved its life. Mother and cub stood together, creating a picture Tom wished desperately he could capture with his camera, but he knew this moment wasn't meant to be photographed. It was something more special, more personal, a connection between species that defied explanation. With one final look at Tom, the mother bear turned away. She made a soft grunting sound to her cub, who immediately followed her. Together they moved toward the forest, their steps unhurried and peaceful. The morning sun caught their fur as they walked, mother and baby, away from the mud pit that had almost claimed the cub's life. Tom watched them disappear into the trees, his heart full of emotions he couldn't name. The whole encounter had lasted only minutes, but he knew it would change him forever. As their forms faded into the forest shadows, he finally allowed himself to move, slowly sitting up on the ground. The bear's footprints left deep impressions in the soft earth, a physical reminder that this incredible encounter had really happened. Each print was larger than Tom's spread hand, a testament to the power of the creature who had shown such unexpected gentleness. The cub's smaller prints followed alongside, no longer stumbling but strong and sure. Tom's hands were shaking as he finally reached for his camera bag. The expensive equipment inside had been forgotten during the rescue, something that had never happened in his 15 years as a wildlife photographer. The bag was covered in mud and water from lying on the ground, but Tom barely noticed. The morning had grown warmer, the sun now high enough to send bright shafts of light through the forest canopy. These beams illuminated particles of dust and pollen in the air, creating golden pathways where the bears had walked. The forest was coming back to life around him, birds resuming their songs, squirrels chattering in the branches above. The mud pit that had almost claimed the cub's life looked different now. What had been a scene of desperate struggle was just another dark pool in the forest. The straps Tom had used in the rescue hung limp and mud-stained, but they had served their purpose. He could replace the equipment, but the life saved was priceless. As his professional instincts slowly returned, Tom began to document the scene. He photographed the footprints, the mud pit, and the disturbed earth where the rescue had taken place, but he knew no photograph could capture the real magic of what had happened here. No image could show the look in the mother bear's eyes or the feeling of her gentle touch on his shoulder. The next morning, Tom returned to his usual photography spot in the forest. Something had changed within him after yesterday's events. The forest felt different somehow, more alive, more connected. His hands moved automatically to set up his equipment, but his mind kept returning to the gentle touch of the mother bear. The morning passed quietly. Tom took photos of sparrows gathering nest materials and a young deer drinking from a stream, but his heart wasn't really in it. Every rustle in the bushes made him look up, hoping to see the bears again. He knew the chances were small, bears rarely returned to the same area 2 days in a row. Around midday, something caught his attention, a sound he recognized. Tom lowered his camera slowly, hardly daring to believe his ears. There, at the edge of the clearing, stood the mother bear. Her fur glowed rich brown in the sunlight, cleaned of yesterday's mud and dirt. Beside her stood her cub, its black coat now glossy and beautiful. Tom sat completely still in his hiding spot, but this time it wasn't fear that held him in place. The mother bear looked directly at his shelter, her nose lifting to catch his scent on the breeze. She knew he was there. The cub bounced playfully around her feet, showing no signs of its ordeal from the previous day. To Tom's amazement, the mother bear led her cub closer to his shelter. They stopped about 30 feet away, a respectful distance that still allowed him to see them clearly. The mother bear sat down, watching him with those same intelligent eyes. The cub settled beside her, mimicking her calm posture. For the next hour, Tom photographed the bears. His hands were steady now as he captured image after image. The mother bear seemed to understand what he was doing. She stayed still, occasionally turning to show different angles. The cub played nearby, providing perfect shots of natural behavior that most photographers could only dream about. As the sun reached its peak, the mother bear stood up. She made that same soft sound Tom had heard yesterday, a deep, gentle rumble. The cub immediately returned to her side. Before leaving, she turned to look one last time at Tom. Their eyes met again, and in that moment, Tom understood something profound about the natural world. These creatures, which humans often feared and misunderstood, were capable of remarkable intelligence and emotion. The mother bear had not only recognized that Tom had helped her cub, but she had chosen to trust him, to show him a side of her world few humans ever witnessed. Over the following weeks, Tom occasionally saw the bears in the forest. They never came as close as that second day, but there was always a moment of recognition. The mother bear would pause, look his way, and give that gentle rumble before moving on with her cub. Tom's photos of the bears became his most personal work, though he never published the ones from that remarkable second day. Those images stayed private, a reminder of something too special to share. Instead, he focused on educating people about bears, working with local conservation groups to protect their habitats. Years later, Tom would still return to that mud pit, now grown over with grass and wildflowers. He would remember the fear, the connection, and most of all, the lesson he learned that day. Nature, in all its power and mystery, had shown him that the line between human and animal was thinner than most people believed. The story of the man who saved a bear cub became a quiet legend in Pine Creek. Some didn't believe it, others added their own embellishments. But Tom knew the truth. He had experienced something extraordinary, a moment of pure trust between species, a connection that went beyond words or explanation. And sometimes, on quiet mornings in the forest, when the sun painted the trees gold and the air held that special stillness, Tom would think about the mother bear's gentle touch and smile. In saving her cub, he had gained something precious. A deeper understanding of the wild heart that beats in all living things and the unexpected ways that compassion could bridge even the widest of gaps between species. In saving her cub, he had gained something precious, a deeper understanding of the wild heart that beats in all living things, and the unexpected ways that compassion could bridge even the widest of gaps between species. Love this story? Watch more incredible wildlife rescues and animal encounters on our YouTube channel. Click subscribe below and join our growing family of nature lovers.